Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video. Before the video starts, I need you to do two things to help this channel grow. One is subscribe down below, and the second is like this video and share it with anybody that you want to spread MMA news to, whether it's family, friends, anybody. I always appreciate your support. And now let's get to the video.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 52. In this episode, I will be reviewing PFL 2, and of course, last weekend we also had UFC 300. What an event! There's so much to talk about. A lot of fight news dropped at that post-fight press conference, so I want to talk about those fights. There is no UFC this weekend, but there is PFL 3 on Friday of this week, so I will be previewing that card. Ring that bell. PFL 2 is the second card of the 2024 regular season. The weight classes that had regular season bouts on this card were light heavyweight and lightweight. This fight card also took place in Las Vegas, so they kicked off the big weekend in MMA. Now let's get to the fights. We had a lightweight bout. We had Elvin Espinoza taking on Adam Piccolotti, and Espinoza gets the flying knee TKO in the third round. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout. We had Brett Primus, who is the former Bellator lightweight champion. He takes on Bruno Miranda, and Primus gets the rear naked choke in the second round. Moving on, we had Yagish Murdov getting a overhand right KO. He really blitzed through his opponent in that fight. Moving on, we had a light heavyweight bout. We had Antonio Carlos Jr., the former PFL light heavyweight champion. He took on Simon Biagj, and Carlos Jr. gets the rear naked choke victory. Moving on, we had a weird one in this fight. Josh Silveira taking on Sadibou Sy, and in the middle of the first round, Sadibou Sy shows Mark Goddard, the referee, that his thumb is dislocated. That's kind of signaling that he doesn't want the fight to continue, so Mark Goddard calls off the fight. Josh Silveira gets the W, the first round finish, so that is a quick 6 in the point category, so very important for the standings this fight. But yeah, a really weird stoppage. Mark Goddard involved in another weird PFL stoppage. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout. We had Michael Dunfort taking on Mads Brunel. And in the second round, Michael Dunfort gets the guillotine choke. Really impressive submission victory. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout. We had Clay Collard taking on Patricky Pitbull. This was the fight that I was most excited to see, and it delivered. Both guys going back and forth. Clay Collard really started to get really good shots in on Patricky Pitbull. And in the second round, Clay Collard gets the TKO. Patricky would not go down, and the stoppage was a little bit questionable because right when the referee jumped in, Patricky did try to throw a strike, but you could really tell that Patricky was starting to fade. Clay Collard was really feeling himself in that fight. Really good performance by Collard. Now, moving on to the light heavyweight division. We had former light heavyweight PFL champ Rob Wilkinson taking on Tom Breeze, and Rob Wilkinson just completely mauls Tom Breeze. Rob Wilkinson gets the TKO from ground and pound, and if I'm pretty sure everybody heard about the comments that Sean O'Connell made when they went to commercial break on ESPN2, but the broadcast feed was still up on the ESPN Plus feed, which that's what I was watching, and Sean O'Connell did not realize that people could hear him, and he joked to his producer, "Can I ask him about his steroids?" Obviously, I think it was last season, Rob Wilkinson popped for PEDs. So after the fight card ended, Sean O'Connell tweeted an apology on Twitter, and I was laughing so hard. I had tears in my eyes when I heard that, and I went straight to Twitter, and I knew I wasn't the only one that heard it. Obviously, if you're the PFL, that's a big no-no, but I mean, that's kind of on the production team. Like, you got to let your talent know that, hey, we have a live feed here. People can hear you. So, I mean, production has to take, a big part of that blame, but I thought it was funny, but obviously not a great look for the PFL. Now, for the main event, we had Impa Kasanganay, the defending light heavyweight champion. He takes on Alex Polizzi. And Impa Kasanganay just shreds right through Alex Polizzi, standing TKO for Kasanganay. Really impressive victory. He gets back to form at 205. His last fight, he went down to 185 to challenge Johnny Eblen. He lost a close split decision. So Impa Kasanganay back on his winning ways. And that was that PFL card. Now, let's get to UFC 300. We now arrive at the most anticipated card of the year, UFC 300. I'm going to cover every single fight, so let's get to the first fight of the night. In the bantamweight division, we had two former champions facing off. We had the former flyweight champion Deiveson Figueiredo taking on the former bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt. And although Cody Garbrandt looked good on the feet early on, once Deiveson Figueiredo started to implement his grappling game, the fight really started to sway in Figueiredo's way. And in the second round, Deiveson Figueiredo gets the rear naked choke submission. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout. We had Bobby King Green taking on Jim Miller, and Bobby Green just puts on a striking clinic. He really busted up Jim Miller's face with his jab. Just an overall classic Bobby Green performance. Jim Miller, credit to him, he hung in there. He was all bloodied, had a really bad cut underneath his eye, but stayed in there and made it to the decision. But yeah, Bobby Green, he is always entertaining. Moving on, we had a women's strawweight bout. We had the former strawweight champion Jessica Andrade. She took on Marina Rodriguez, and this was a split decision victory for Jessica Andrade. Really close fight, not a robbery by any means. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout. We had Rakhano Moicano taking on Jalen Turner, and in the first round, with about 15 seconds left, Jalen Turner sits down Moicano, but he walks away thinking he got a walk-off KO. Moicano is as tough as they come. Moicano pops right back up, finishes that first round. They both go to the stools, and then with 4 minutes and 11 seconds of round number 2, Moicano gets the TKO finish over Jalen Turner. Man, Jalen Turner really must be kicking himself. He really should have followed Moicano to the ground. I know Moicano has really good BJJ, but man, Turner, like I was watching that live, and when those moments come up in a fight and you don't capitalize on those small opportunities, most of the time it really, really costs the fighter in the end. So, man, hopefully Jalen Turner can learn from this experience. But Moicano goes on the mic and does what he does, very entertaining. So he used his mic time very wisely. He promoted his podcast and his betting shows and whatnot. So Moicano continues to be one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC. Moving on, we had a featherweight bout. We had Diego Lopez taking on Sodiq Yusuff, and Diego Lopez wastes no time And man, he really hurt Yusuf bad in the first round, and he ends up finishing it in the first round. He threw really nice uppercuts that dropped Yusuf. Both times it was uppercuts in the clinch. And then the second time, uppercut in the clinch and ground strikes. Win it for Lopez. This guy is a star in the featherweight division. He is now ranked, so cannot wait to see what the next move is for Diego Lopez. Moving on, we had a women's bantamweight bout. We had Kayla Harrison making her UFC debut, taking on the former bantamweight champion Holly Holm. And Kayla Harrison gets the rear naked choke submission in the second round. Kayla Harrison looked really good in her UFC debut. She is automatically one of their top 135ers. So excited that she made the weight. And when she came out rehydrated, I knew she was going to win that fight. Also, I don't understand why Holly Holm decided to clinch Kayla Harrison, but that was an interesting tactic by Holm. So she probably regrets that. She really should have stayed at distance. But Kayla Harrison's a beast. Anybody who has watched MMA and anybody who has any knowledge of MMA outside of the UFC, they knew that Kayla Harrison is a beast. She's a 2-time PFL champion. It was really about the weight. That's why I said on the podcast when I was previewing this card, I'm not going to make any decision on that fight until I see Kayla Harrison make that weight and then see her rehydrated. Kudos to her. She looks like a beast, and she might even get Amanda Nunes out of retirement, and that's just going to revive this 135 division. Props for Kayla Harrison for really just being that spark in this 135 division. Moving on, we had a featherweight bout. We had Aljamain Sterling, the former bantamweight champion, making his featherweight debut against Boston's own Calvin Kattar. Aljamain Sterling dominates. He out wrestles Kattar, and Kattar had no response for the takedowns that Sterling was getting. Sterling looks so strong at 145. I really can't wait to see him fight higher competition in this weight class. I really think that Sterling he definitely has a shot to get a title shot in this division. His grappling, his wrestling, when he gets on your back, I mean, he's a very exciting grappler. Although the fight with Kattar wasn't really exciting, he did more of wrestling and trying to hold his position. So you kind of got to understand that Sterling, that's his style. He's going to wrestle. And with Calvin Kattar, why would he even want to try and even test his stand-up against Kattar, who is a stand-up specialist? So Aljamain Sterling gets that unanimous decision victory. Now, moving on to the light heavyweight division, we had the former light heavyweight champion Yuri Prochazka. He took on Alexander Rakic. Rakic was coming off of a 2-year layoff. He hurt his knee in his last fight against Jan Blachowicz. But this was a crazy fight. Alexander Rakic comes out round 1 and just really puts it on Yuri Prochazka, beats up Prochazka's legs. Yuri was in a lot of trouble. And then we get to the second round, and Rakic is still looking good. Then Yuri starts to catch him, really starts to hurt Rakic, and then he really rocks Rakic and just goes in for the kill. Really, it was a crazy comeback win for Yuri Prochazka. He gets a performance bonus of the night, so he got that $300K. So congratulations to Yuri Prochazka. This guy is so scary, and he was getting damaged, and his legs looked like they were unstable, and he had a cut near his eye, and he looked so undeterred. He just looked like he was getting charged up every time he took any type of damage. So he is a scary man. He is back in the light heavyweight championship title talks now with that victory. Now we move to the main card, and we started it off in the middleweight division. We had Bo Nickel taking on Cody Brundage, and in the second round, Bo Nickel gets the rear naked choke. Brundage did his job. He tested Bo Nickel. He gave him his best effort. Brundage was really competitive in this fight, and Bo Nickel ends up getting that rear naked choke in the second, but this was a competitive fight, and I think Bo Nickel, this was a really good learning experience for him. He really needed to have someone push back in one of his fights because he usually runs over his opponent. So it was good to see him overcome some things in this fight and still end up getting that victory. He's still only 6-0, so sky's the limit for Bo Nickel. Now we move on to the lightweight division. We had Arman Tsarukyan taking on the former lightweight champion Charles Oliveira, and Arman Tsarukyan wins by split decision. This fight was really super close, but in that first round, I thought Charles Oliveira was going to get that submission. Somehow Arman Tsarukyan gets out of that. He pops his head out of the choke. He basically jumped out of his fight shorts. I've seen that happen another time, but that doesn't happen often. But that's how tight that choke was for Oliveira. But kudos to Tsarukyan for surviving that choke, and he also survived another submission attempt by Oliveira. So Arman Tsarukyan's ground game is nothing to overlook with him. This guy showed that he's elite. When you can survive those submission attempts by Charles Oliveira, you're something special on the ground. Obviously, the fight probably could have went either way, but Arman Tsarukyan, he survived those positions, and he had his moments as well. Charles Oliveira, though, in this loss, he didn't look bad. So this was just a very, very competitive fight. Just the top of this division. It was a treat to watch. Oh, man. Now, moving on to, I don't even know what to call this fight, to the BMF title fight. Oh, man. This fight was just hands down insanity. Oh, and yeah, man, everyone's reaction to this fight. Oh man, this was a lightweight fight. This was Max Blessed Holloway taking on Justin the Highlight Gaethje, and what a highlight this whole fight was. Man, in the end of the first round, Holloway throws a beautiful spinning back kick, and it lands right on Gaethje's nose. Definitely broke his nose. That was the end of the first round. Literally, right before the buzzer sounds, that kick lands on Gaethje's nose. And for the rest of the fight, Gaethje is breathing out of his mouth. That really, really was a big factor in this fight, no doubt. And Max Holloway had control of this fight. I thought that Gaethje knocked down Max Holloway. I think it was in the fourth round, but the UFC stat people did not count it as a knockdown. So I guess it wasn't a knockdown, even though it looked like a knockdown. They showed the replay, and it looked like a knockdown to me, and it looked like a knockdown to the broadcast crew, but officially it is not ruled a knockdown. But man, this fight was a banger. Holloway really dominated and controlled this fight. And then in the last 10 seconds, what does Max Holloway do? He does what a real BMF does. He points to the middle just like he did with Ricardo Lamos, and he does it with Justin Gaethje. I was thinking in my head while they were walking out, these two men, that is Holloway going to do that if the fight gets to the last 10 seconds? Will he throw down like he did with Ricardo Lamos? Is he going to throw down with Gaethje? And I thought, no, probably not, because it's just too dangerous. Max Holloway does not give a shit. He pointed to the center of the octagon, and credit to Justin Gaethje, he obliged, and these dudes swung bombs. And with 1 second left, Max Holloway lands a flush shot on Justin Gaethje's chin and face plants Gaethje. and he gets the KO overhand right victory. Max Holloway is the new BMF champion. This was an insane fight. This is definitely a UFC Hall of Fame fight. These two men will be immortalized in the UFC Hall of Fame for this fight one day, and they both will probably go in as individuals, but yeah, Max Holloway gets 600K bonus. This is the fight of the night, and he gets a performance bonus. Max Holloway deserves every penny of that 600K and more. This dude's a beast. He puts on for Hawaii every single time he steps in the octagon. And shout out to Justin Gaethje. Oh man, it was insane to watch, but man, I felt bad for Gaethje. He came into the fight like Max said, and he had nothing to really gain and everything to lose, and Gaethje stood there and, you know, took this fight. And man, much respect to Justin Gaethje, because, you know, he gave up his shot at that lightweight gold. If he won this fight, he would have definitely fought for the lightweight belt, but, you know, he's Justin Gaethje, man. What can I say? He's also, you know, a BMF in his own right. So congratulations to both of these badasses for putting on a gladiator war. And yeah, we still had two more fights. I was totally spent energy-wise for these last two fights. But we had a UFC strawweight championship bout. We had the champion Weili Zhang taking on Yang Xiaonan. And just, really big fight for the country of China. Both Chinese women in a title fight, really important for that country. And I thought Weili Zhang won at the end of the first round. She definitely put out Yan. Yan was unconscious and then woke up and stumbled to her corner. And hey, they did a good job with reviving her, because Yan won the third round, I think, on every judge's scorecard. Obviously, Weili Zhang took control of this fight eventually, and Weili Zhang defends her belt for the second time by unanimous decision. But Yan, you know, she is a tough-ass woman. She went unconscious and without hesitation got up, walked to her corner, and continued to fight for the rest of the fight. And Weili Zhang really putting up some impressive performances. Now we move to the main event of this historical milestone of a card. We have the UFC light heavyweight champion up for grabs. We have the champion Alex Pereira, the former UFC middleweight champion and current UFC light heavyweight champion. He takes on the former light heavyweight champion Jamal Hill, the man who never lost his title. He relinquished it because of injury, and Alex Pereira wasted no time in this fight. He found his range, and then Jamal Hill accidentally, it was supposed to be a body kick, gets Pereira in the groin, but Pereira says, no, Herb Dean. He puts his hand to Herb Dean's face to tell him, no, I'm good. And 5 seconds later, left hook connects to Jamal Hill, not even cleanly. The left hook just lands, and Jamal Hill's eyes, when he fell down, he looked like Alex Pereira hit him with a baseball bat. He looked so surprised by his power. Alex Pereira follows him to the ground and finishes him with really brutal ground strikes. Alex Pereira, just what a beast this man is. He is 10-2, and he has made an impact in the UFC so fast. And this dude is just, I don't know what he's made of. He's a legend in the kickboxing world, and he's fastly becoming a legend in the mixed martial arts world. And after the fight, Alex Pereira said he wants to go to heavyweight. Dana White at the post-fight press conference kind of shot that down. I think they know that Alex Pereira is really becoming a big star for them. They really need his star power in this light heavyweight division. Man, Alex Pereira, man, I'll watch any one of his fights. This guy is really one of the most powerful punchers I have ever seen. This guy, like I said, doesn't even land cleanly and still puts people down. I'm never going to forget the look on Jamal Hill's face after he got hit with that left hook. just a insane performance. And yes, that was UFC 300. What a card, what a night. I am just so proud of the evolution of the sport. You know, I really started following MMA closely in 2020. The first ever pay-per-view card that I ordered was McGregor versus Cowboy, and really ever since then I've been following MMA, and just from that card to this card, there's been so many changes. And obviously, as I got more into MMA history, I went back and really looked at the history of MMA and some of the earlier events, and just so grateful that MMA is on the platform it is. You know, there's still a long way to go to boost MMA in the sports world, so I will never stop advocating for MMA to be bigger in every aspect. So shout out to the UFC. They put on a great night. Shout out to every single one of these fighters. They put their lives on the line on this card. And also for every single fighter in MMA and in the UFC, shout out to you guys. It wouldn't be anything if you didn't put your heart on your chest and go out there and perform as best as you possibly can. Thank you to all the pioneers that have really made, you know, the UFC what it is today. Now, let's get to this weekend's PFL action. PFL 3 is the third card of the 2024 regular season. They are in Chicago, Illinois, and the weight classes that will have their regular season bouts are featherweight and welterweight. There's some interesting matchups and fighters on this card, so let's get into it. The first fighter that I want to highlight, he is a welterweight, and he is Brendan Ward, an all-action fighter. It's always a bloody good time when Brendan Ward is fighting. Most of his victories come by way of knockout. So, you know, he's coming in there to take his opponent's heads off. Yeah, he is just such a fun fighter to watch. Moving on, we have a featherweight bout. We got Tumar Kraziv, who is 14-0. He takes on veteran Brett Johns. Moving on, we have a featherweight bout. We got Adam Boris taking on Enrique Barzola. And kicking off the main card, we got featherweights. We got Bubba Jenkins, who's been a PFL mainstay. He takes on Kai Kamaka, the former Bellator fighter who's making his PFL debut. Not too long ago, I spoke to Kai Kamaka about this fight. If you did not see the interview, it is on the YouTube page. Always appreciate Kai for coming on and taking the time to talk to me. Moving on, we have a welterweight bout. We got Gachi Yamaguchi. He takes on Naaman Gracie. This is going to be a very fun grappling matchup. Both of these guys are high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. So excited to see their grappling exchanges. Moving on, we have a featherweight bout. We got Gabriel Braga taking on Bellator veteran Justin Gonzalez. Up next, we have a welterweight bout. We got the former Bellator welterweight champion Logan Storley. He takes on Shamel Muziv. Muziv is 16-0-1. Storley's 15-2 in his own right. This one should be fun. Moving on, we have the former PFL featherweight champion Brandon Loughnane. He takes on Bellator vet Pedro Cavallo. This should be a fun matchup. Really looking forward to seeing Brandon Loughnane back in action. Now we move on to the main event. We got Andrei Karasov, the former Bellator champion. He takes on Magomed Amalatov, who is 5-0 in PFL, and overall he is 14-0. This one should be pretty competitive. And that's going to do it for that PFL card. Now, let's talk about the post-fight announcements that Dana White made after UFC 300. We had some huge fight announcements in the post-presser for UFC 300. Dana White was slid a piece of paper and he read off these matchups. I'm going to go to UFC 302. That's going to be in Newark, New Jersey. Main event for that one is the reigning lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. He defends his title against Dustin Poirier. And also announced for that event, the co-main event for that will be Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa in a 5-round co-main event. Now that card 302 is looking real nice. I may even try to go snag some tickets since it's not too far of a drive from me, but definitely New Jersey's getting a really, really good card, and that's a really good main event and co-main event. Now we get to the even bigger news, which I'm just surprised that they didn't even pop this up on the broadcast or whatever, but Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, they will be fighting each other June 29th at International Fight Week, UFC 303, and it will be at 170 pounds. This fight has been about 2 years in the making, or maybe even 3. McGregor has not fought since he broke his leg against Dustin Poirier, and I think Conor's going to win this fight just because of how Michael Chandler fights so aggressively, and he looks. Yeah, I've been watching some of Michael Chandler's UFC fights. I watched his Gaethje fight and I watched his Dustin Poirier fight, and he comes out guns blazing. He's looking sharp. He's looking good, and then midway near the end of that first round, that's where he starts to be really hittable. And Conor, yeah, he's older and probably a little slower, but I mean, if Chandler thinks that he can just go into Conor and like crush the space without paying for it, I mean, he's gonna be really like wrong. I just think Conor's gonna stay on the outside like he always tries to do and pick him apart. Obviously, the way to beat Conor is to have Conor on his back foot. So Michael Chandler is not afraid to go forward. So he probably will go forward and try to crush that space. He's got to make this fight dirty, and he's got to make Conor feel uncomfortable. You can't have Conor in space, because Conor in space, he's just going to admire his work, and he's going to get in his flow, and he's just going to eventually start popping off a bunch of shots. So, you know, he's not afraid to take a punch, to give a punch. So this fight's going to be action packed. I am going to take McGregor, like I said, to win this fight, because Chandler probably will not use his wrestling, even though he should. Because hey, if Chandler uses all of the facets of his MMA game, he would probably win against Conor McGregor. But I feel like Chandler, the way that he fights since he got to the UFC, he's not going to wrestle. He may not even attempt a takedown. He's just going to go balls to the wall action. And as a fan, I'm there for that. But, man, I don't know if that's the smartest thing for Chandler to do, if that's the way that he's going to do it. And also, after this fight, Conor, if he stays in welterweight, it's going to be a tough road for him. But he is the biggest star in the UFC still. And I am very excited to see him finally back in the cage. It's always a different type of vibe and atmosphere when Conor McGregor is fighting. I hope that this card is pretty good top to bottom. I hope they don't just have the Conor McGregor main event and then kind of throw a bunch of other fights under it and just hoping that Conor will sell, the whole event. I hope there's some other interesting fights on that card. But again, I'm really surprised that the UFC didn't pop up like a promo or something about the McGregor-Chandler fight, because, like I said, the fight's been in the works for like 2 years. Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko started recording a new season of Tough before these guys even were fighting. So it's been a long time coming. I'm happy for Chandler. He's waited for this money fight, and I just hope it's competitive and action-packed. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO Podcast. To stay up to date with the podcast, in all of my social media bios, I have a link tree. Click on it and you will get every social media and every site that the podcast is on. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye bye.